right, we're kicking things off. Episode 43, the Coast to Coast NHL podcast. I'm here with my main man, Tori, here to kick things off after the trade deadline in the books. NHL, we're like 12, 13, 14 games away from end of season. It's going to be interesting how they're going to figure out some of these postponements that have been going on. But we're going to get to the bottom of it. That's part of what we're going to do today. Going to go through our 3 stars, trade deadline talk, and maybe get to some other stuff along the way. I know you have a trivia question. I tried not to get a spoiler on that, so I didn't do any research. I have an idea, but that's all I got.
All right, cool, awesome. Well, I mean, the first thing I have here, obviously, the most recent news that we just kind of received before recording this here is that another Vancouver Canucks game has been postponed. Yep. I believe it's versus the Oilers. But there's been some stuff that's come out recently. How much have you been in tune with that situation?
With the Vancouver COVID situation? Not really anything at all.
Yeah. I was hoping that you had a little bit just because you're in Vancouver. But
no. Not having the drive to work with the Vancouver local news, I think I'm part of the reason the sports radio is gone in Vancouver now, because I was an avid listener, stopped commuting to work. Their ratings must have just tanked after that, and then that was it. But no, the only real thing I got is that, like, the biggest rumor and all that, and it's just a rumor, is that the whole thing started via Adam Gaudette on some reason. But again, it's a rumor, and I don't want to spread rumors. And now he was traded at the trade deadline, so I don't know if any of this has anything to do with anything. But
there's always signs, and like I know I've talked about that before, that I enjoy trying to read between the lines, and you've got the crosshairs on something here, because Gaudette was a guy who the Canucks always liked. They were always a big fan of him. He was always a big prospect. He did well. They put the time and effort and energy into building him into what they wanted. And then they traded him for a guy that a lot of people regard as even more of a project and less of a ceiling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you don't move off a guy unless there's a reason.
He was kind of like, everyone I think was expecting, now that this was Sutter's last year in Vancouver, likely, that Gaudette would eventually, he'd slot into that third center role very well. So I don't know, like, who knows? They're keeping it under wraps. From what I can tell, but yeah.
I think it was 21 players had tested positive, and another one had recently tested positive. There was some speculation that Alex Edler has a lung infection, which is why he's been out so long. There's rumors that Quinn Hughes has been on an IV for 3 days. There's other stuff going on as well that, again, rumors, who knows, unless somebody actually confirms, that's a different situation. But at the same time, we know they're struggling. And another thing that came out, actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I doubt you probably heard any of this, but the Toronto Marlies had a similar situation that's popped up for them. And they've basically canceled all practices, closed facilities. They're all isolating, everything like that. But right now, that also means that the Maple Leafs can't call anybody up because the AHL team is basically locked. So even on an emergency basis, I don't know what they'd have to actually do in that situation. But back to Vancouver, Vancouver does have the option, because their AHL team was not in the same situation. They can come up, and it looks like not only are they going to have to play, 19 games in 32 nights or something like that. They said 6 back-to-backs with an AHL team. I get that they have to play more so for the other teams than anything, but like, when are we pushing it too far?
Yeah, seriously. And like, if all this going on at the COVID, a lot of their main players are still, like, they're not going to be up to professional level. So that, at what point do they just like field that AHL team, or like their AHL's their backup? Like, it's going to be worse than the Senators. Maybe the Senators are going to have some fun though.
And if it's a 12-2 game, what kind of quality of product are you really forcing out there for the money, right, on the bottom line? And what about injuries? Like, some former players were talking about it today, and they're like, if you're tired and you're stretching your muscles and stuff, they're more susceptible for tears and stuff like that. Especially if you haven't played in 3 weeks, is it now? And then all of a sudden you have to play 6 games in 9 nights. the chances of you tearing a groin or something like that go up substantially. So now does that equate to them putting you in a workplace, so to speak, in an unhealthy situation and forcing somebody to do something that maybe their body and they shouldn't be forced to do, especially everything that's going on?
Yeah,
It's concerning to me.
it is. I agree. I don't know what they're gonna do. I guess they feel like they have to do something though, which with all sponsorships, all that kind of stuff always involved. It sucks. Money talks in these situations, and all the issues that the players are suffering. Hopefully, it doesn't just get swept under the rug and something actually happens. I don't know, like when it happened earlier in the season with Buffalo, like we kind of forget now already.
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because there's been several teams, New Jersey, Dallas, Montreal to a lesser extent, who had similar situations. But the only difference between that and what everyone has to keep in mind when we discuss that specific topic is that those incidents with those teams were COVID. The one with Vancouver is the variant of COVID. So it's different. Yeah. So it's not the known necessarily. It's something that could be less known. And the one thing that they have confirmed in some capacity that is a condition or something that happens after you get through the worst phases is an enlarged heart. So you got to think these athletes who pump all the heart, if it gets enlarged, there's a higher chance of it rupturing. There's a higher chance of all these other medically.
I don't know too much about this variant thing.
Yeah, they're talking about today just about the heart inflammation, because you may or may not have heard about these people having these cardiac arrests because of the incidents that they've been having. And that's because of what's happening is their hearts are, a lot of them, their hearts are enlarging, and then they're going out for a run or whatever, thinking they're fine. And then all of a sudden their heart explodes or it busts a valve or something like that. Ouch, and then you're dead. Right. So if you're an athlete and you're like, hey, go play 12 games in 15 nights and you're going.
Yeah. That's a recipe for disaster. Yeah.
Like catastrophe. Like, yeah. And then we'd be talking about some other issues. And I think that's something that has to be addressed, thought of anyways. And who knows if we're going to see the conclusion of this season based on this. If this was a team that was in the playoffs beforehand, what if this was a Maple Leafs, or what if this was a Winnipeg Jets, or what if this was a Pittsburgh Penguins or a Colorado Avalanche? Would we be doing the same thing? Or what happens if this was Vegas in the first round of the playoffs?
Yeah, seriously.
Are they going to have to forfeit? Probably, yeah. Right? Or are you going to play with your AHL team?
Yikes. Let's hope. Right? I'm hoping we don't have to go down that road.
Yeah, but it's logical stuff. It's possible stuff. And I hope we don't have to deal with it. But this whole thing with Vancouver it's really putting the spotlight on it. I think it's sad that JT Miller is the one that's kind of had to break the seal, so to speak. Not the Players Association, not the Vancouver Canucks as an organization. One of their players had to basically stand up on a pedestal by himself, and I don't know if anyone else better than JT Miller could have done it. Like, he's the guy that when he stands up, people listen just because of the type of guy he is. If Quinn Hughes said that, or a Pettersson said that, or something like that,
they'd be like,
would have had the same impact, right? Mm-hmm. So. No, interesting situations, but
definitely turning into an interesting one. It's fucking COVID,
and it sucks too, because I know for me, not even Vancouver, but I have Tavares in my fantasy pool next week, and if I get through this week, it's the second last and the last week of our entire season in playoffs, and I'll be missing 3 games because of Tavares.
Yeah.
So like I'm losing one of my top centers for games played because of COVID. And now everyone is, but I'm just saying, for the timing of the season and everything like that, I think everyone's just going to be excited for this season to be ending.
But I think so too.
We'll get there eventually.
Playoffs will be great though. If they get back into the bubble, then it'll be fine.
Yeah, which I think they will for playoffs.
Yeah.
But speaking about canceled seasons, the CHL looks like their season's done. They officially canceled the Memorial Cup. Citing travel issues. They said that their season is still up in the air, but like we're in April now. Mm-hmm. If you aren't going to have a Memorial Cup, which is to determine the best team in the CHL, plus the host, it's just kind of like, what's the point of playing, 12 games in a mini playoff series?
Yeah,
and they don't get paid, and when these junior teams have to pay the money for
and
all this
again,
stuff.
you go back to that risk that you were just talking about with these young guys. Like, yeah, their whole lives ahead of them.
Right? Why put yourself through that? Exactly, right?
Right.
Especially if they don't think that they're actually ever going to make it. But in terms of prospects, the one other thing I want to mention is you probably haven't seen this
No,
stuff, but there's been
this
a
is new.
lot of prospects signing around the NHL right now, and it's interesting because that ain't getting into too much depth, but you can give an AHL contract or you can give an NHL contract. An NHL contract is guaranteed and it's your money, and you have to play wherever they find you unless they loan you out. Where an AHL contract, it's still guaranteed, but it can be terminated by either party at any time.
Okay.
So if you sign a prospect, he has a killer season, and somebody comes along halfway through and says, "You scored 30 goals in 30 games. I want you on my NHL team." He can up and pack and sign with that team overnight. So that's the only downfall for AHL contracts. But that being said, all these overage kids or kids who basically didn't get to play this year that got zero exposure to scouts are all signing 2-year AHL contracts with all these NHL teams, which allow them to play in the ECHL, the AHL. They cannot play in the NHL unless they sign an NHL deal, but they can play in ECHL, AHL, or like lower. So it's basically them guaranteeing that one of the big dogs, one of the big teams is taking care of them for the next 2 years, which can be said more about what would they have gotten in junior, right? Like we talked about that a couple episodes ago.
You were kind of foreshadowing this kind of thing, that being a possibility going forward, is that people were just gonna say F junior and just do this.
Yeah, I can make even if I get a 2-year deal and I make 1.1 million over the 2 years, like a 650 and 650 or something like that, or even 400. You can make $1 million, or you can or you can do what? To be determined.
Yeah. Watch the canceled Memorial Cup.
Yeah, you don't get bonuses, stuff like that. So like you're risking some stuff, but if you're not the elite, or if you're worried about your future, or if you want to just get moving towards the goal instead of just standing still, it's a good option.
When you're a prospect, the worst thing that could happen is to just not be playing, training, practicing, getting better, working with coaches, watching video, seeing where your mistakes are. Like that's the worst possibility, right? Like you said, standing still while other people are moving forward in Europe and Russia, wherever else they're playing. That's probably the best thing they can do.
Put it in school perspective. Imagine you're going through school and all of a sudden you get to grade 7, and all of a sudden it just stops and you just have to wait. And you don't do anything for a year. Are you going to go to grade 8? No. You have to do grade 7 still. So, like, now you're just the next year in grade 7 again.
You're
so, like, that whole year.
Spot,
yeah, and maybe you've had time to develop bad habits. You've maybe been bored and got sidetracked, stuff like that. Maybe hockey isn't as important. Maybe you get into unfortunate substance abuse issues.
I was going to say, become a crack baby. Right? You're like, what? Yeah, no,
you never know, right?
It's exciting. So. It just goes to show, like, NHL is like everything else. Everything else is trying to adapt to the times, and everyone's got to find their own way. And this is just another one of those situations.
But with that specific topic, it's a lot of the kids are signing with teams that are known to have good, coaches or good facilities or whatever. So. The rich are going to get richer.
Yeah, it's like in college football, right? In college sports, like the big teams, the big names, and they bring in the big athletes because they got the good programs.
Them,
yeah,
exactly. So that will be interesting to continue to see develop and continue to see along with the draft. The only reason that one's been a big topic for me recently is a lot of Leaf fans have been kind of a little bit, not upset, but just talking about how many draft picks we traded away and how the lack of draft picks we have over the next 2 years. I think the Leafs have 5, maybe 6 picks over the next 2 drafts, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we also had a record-setting amount of picks over the last 2 drafts. So, like, if you look over the 4-year period, it's the same shit, basically. Yeah. But then you also add on top of all these AHL guys. Like, the Leafs have signed the defenseman of the year in multiple leagues for the last 3 consecutive years.
Yeah, it seems like the Leafs are really attacking their where they have the competitive advantage when it comes to that, which makes sense. Like, why they have that advantage, they can use it.
The way they advertise it is not like, hey, come here so that you can be a star for us. It's come here so you can become a star. if that means it's on a different team, we'll trade you. And they, over the last couple of years, you've seen the Leafs specifically do right by their players.
Yep.
And like if they can't get them ice time, they move them.
Prime
and that's
example
what
that comes
draws
to my
people to
mind
come.
is Levo for that situation. That's the prime guy.
Soshnikov was another one. Barabanov this year was another one.
It's kind of like they're spending money making players and then trading them for other assets. It's like investing in talent. Like they're basically becoming a hockey mill.
Yeah, basically. And even if you don't need him and you turn him into, you sign this guy, a year later you get a 4th rounder, and then 3 years later you get a star because of it. You turned a star over. Yeah, it took you 6 years to get him. But when you're hopefully competitive and you need that 5th rounder to turn into a star and he shows up, that's when it's going to make the difference, right? So we'll see in 4 or 5 years from now. But I guess my main point of all this is the whole parity of the NHL is going to be challenged with this. And it's going to be fun to watch because at least the team I like is it's one of the good ones. So
yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
But yeah, let's get to the trade deadline since we kind of just got through that.
Yeah, let's do it. Trade deadline.
You want to start? You want to do goalies or start goalies maybe?
Yeah, let's start with our goalies. Do you just want to go over our list on the trade talk, or do you want to just do the whole thing, or what?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it'll be slightly different for each, but I mean, I guess if we're going to start with goalies, there was only 3 goalies traded.
Yeah,
only 1 from our chart. I think we both knew Dubnyk was going somewhere. You called it right, so good on you. Whoop. Good on you. What was the other one? That's I know. What was the other goalie? I guess Rittich to Toronto. Yeah,
which surprised me.
Yeah, I heard it was Colorado and Toronto fighting over him, and then Toronto upped their offer, which to me suggests that they see their future net in Rittich and Campbell.
Yeah,
I think that they spent a 3rd on him. Like to me, that's not just a security blanket for your 3rd option. They could have got Dubnyk for cheaper. They got Rittich because they're going to keep him. I'm convinced of that.
It's kind of interesting because, like, in theory, these 2 teams could meet up if they both win their respective 4 bracket. Then they would play each other. Grubauer is out for 2 weeks. Dubnyk's going to have to step up. Maybe he makes. Who knows? And like.
Yeah, he made it interesting last night. Were you watching the game last night?
No, I just kind of like
2 nights ago, whatever it was.
It was last night, yeah. But I just watched the like quick highlights and stuff. What do you mean he made it interesting by letting in that goal right at the end?
I think it was 4-0. It was 4-0 or 4-1 going into the last few minutes of the 3rd, and then it got to 4-3, and then St. Louis was all over them. I was watching, and I think the puck was in the zone for 2.5 minutes at one point, and they just couldn't get it past Dubnyk. It wasn't even Dubnyk that was stopping it. It was just there's so many bodies in front of the way.
Typical Colorado. It's not really the goalie that wins. It's the team in front of the goalie.
Yeah,
but
which is good teams. I mean that's what good teams do, right? But yeah, I think the biggest surprise in terms of goalies that didn't move is Bernier.
Yeah, totally.
I think
agree.
we're both a little shocked that didn't happen.
Yep, there must be a reason though, right? Do you think it must mean that they're working on something, or like it'll be strange to see him walk for nothing? But maybe there's just no one no callers, like considering Rittich, like the teams we thought were going to get goalies got goalie. Well, maybe not. I thought Pittsburgh was going to get a goalie, and they didn't do anything on that front.
For a guy that's expiring for only $3 million, where Detroit could have easily eaten half, and for a guy that isn't going to cost a lot as a 3rd option to even get a 3rd team involved again to eat half of that, for like a 4th and a 4th to have done that to grab Bernier for a couple teams, I don't see that would have been it wouldn't have been a bad idea, but maybe you're right. Maybe they just didn't land in time, or
who knows?
Maybe just didn't. Yeah, I don't know. It seems a little weird to me, but who knows? Maybe he resigns there for a year or 2. I don't know. It seemed a little weird to me, but
yeah,
it's what it is. Any other topics on goalies you wanted to cover?
I think that was it, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. You go first.
I was just gonna say I was a little surprised Allmark didn't get traded. Just from what I've read in the past, to me it seemed he was moving on. He seemed like he was done being in Buffalo, much like Leonard kind of was before him. I'm a little shocked he didn't resign and then or didn't get traded. And then after the deadline passed, there was talk of him potentially resigning.
Yeah.
That might be a ploy or a tactic for expansion. I know I alluded to that, I think last week, that Buffalo didn't have anyone to expose. So, I mean, maybe it's more worth it for them to give him an extension, get him through expansion, and then trade him. Um, I don't know. That's the only other weird one.
At the end of the day, does Buffalo really think they're as far behind as what they are on paper today? They probably don't. Like, the division itself is by far the best division of the four, I think.
Yeah.
So for them to get smacked around and having a bad season without Eichel, and Hall was a disappointment, and then just all around COVID situation, like, I don't know if they are as concerned as their record as a franchise. I don't think I would be. I would just, it's a wash. Like, this is for me, for them. If I were them, I would just consider the season, it's a lost season. It sucks. We lost our coach, whatever. Our star players out. We still have the core pieces here to like build a competing team. Definitely when we go back to the divisions, where we're in a division where we can beat up on Ottawa. I think they would have the right team to be able to play the Habs very well, and just the regular division that they're a part of, they can compete in, I think, compared to this one that they're in right now.
I think the management is probably along the same lines as you there, where they're not as concerned. They don't think they're as far away. As a fan,
that's a different story.
I think it's a completely different situation. Like, I brought this up, and it's what I keep coming back to, which I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. If they're trying to rebuild, they didn't trade anything they could for assets. They didn't get that much back, which I get. You got whatever you could back. But I thought that they had a unique opportunity for not having a lot of guys that were expansion eligible or expansion required to be kept or waived or whatever. They were in a unique opportunity where they had 2 or 3 spots open, and you have these other teams who have 1 or 2 bodies that they want to move out and get something back. I felt like Buffalo could have used an opportunity to almost buy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that they could buy and build their roster and say, hey, Eichel, like, we know you're out, but this is us being serious. We don't have scouts anyways. Like, they have no scouts. So what are you going to do with draft picks? There's no point. So use those draft picks that get bodies now. And then, hey, if they don't work in a year or 2 and you have to move Eichel, then you get rid of everything and you take all those picks at that time. But I thought they could have, like the Leafs, for example. I know they didn't really want to get rid of Kerfoot, but they could have said, we'll give you a third for Kerfoot, and then you can turn around and spend a third on the asset that you want for your playoff run. There should have been 4 or 5, 6 opportunities out there like that. Or you look at an expansion team who may have had 2 goalies. They could have gone out and got one of those goalies and been like, it's cheap because they knew they're going to lose them for anything or for nothing anyways. I don't know. I thought they missed out on an opportunity to buy a couple assets there.
Yeah, I wonder how much this COVID situation hindered certain teams in making any deals, because for me this trade deadline was a pretty big sleeper compared to in the past. Maybe I just wasn't as in tuned as normal.
It was.
I
watched the trade deadline show. I watched it I watch it religiously. That's one of my favorite days of the year. If it happens to be on a day where I like have to work on the phones or something, I usually actually will take it off just because I like to like listen to everything. Honestly, all it was just spin-offs and spoofs and like making fun of other things. There was no actual like information or like
I'm usually like you as well. Like I'll remember when I was a kid, my very first trade deadline where I realized trade deadline was like a thing was the year that Ryan Smith from the Oilers got traded. And they just kept replaying his interview over and over. That's the one I always remember.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to move? Let's talk about defensemen, I guess.
Yeah, let's move on to the defensemen. I had a couple kind of stars here on ones before we get into the traded ones.
Sure.
One was Vatanen, who was actually waived, and he ended up in Dallas, which was actually an interesting move. Kind of what I just said about Buffalo. Dallas isn't in the playoff picture, and they used the opportunity to buy something that was cheap.
Yep.
That could help them. I know that Dallas is closer to the playoffs than Buffalo, so it's a little bit different situation, but still, same kind of point. And then the second guy I had written there was Anthony Deangelo, who there was a rumor that Montreal had tried to acquire him, and or the Rangers were working on a mutual termination of contract where he would then go and sign in Montreal on like a cheaper deal, probably a 1 year whatever deal just to prove me kind of thing. And Deangelo said no. I don't want to do anything, which means that the Rangers, because once you buy out, you don't have to get players' permission, but to terminate, it has to be mutual, right? So he didn't want to lose his money.
I don't blame him. If I were him, I would do the same thing. It's a COVID season. It's a crappy season. Why not just sit at home
at the same time,
make all your money?
If you're somebody who's desperate for a second chance or another opportunity to prove yourself, and you're given an opportunity to prove yourself, but you have to give up all your money to do so, you'd stick with sticking with your money over getting an opportunity to prove yourself?
Yeah. Well, like if I'm putting myself in his shoes, I picture this guy as somewhat of a guy with a big ego. He doesn't. I don't think he feels that he has to prove himself personally.
And that's part of the problem. That's why I think it's a joke. And to me, if he was legitimate and serious and saw his wrongdoings in his past that we've all read about, which he doesn't, he could have been like, basically the way to see it is if he accepted that termination and go to Montreal and he performed, helped Montreal get in the playoffs and was a name down the stretch, people might have forgotten what happened and the door would have potentially opened for a second chance. The fact he didn't get this, he's going to get bought out, and I'm almost certain he doesn't get another opportunity in the NHL ever again.
I don't know. The Francophones would have eaten him alive.
They would have. But that would have been a good learning opportunity for him.
Well, maybe. But I just get the idea that someone like that doesn't learn from those kind of things.
And if that's truth, then that speaks on his character, and he should not be in my change room. I don't want him anywhere near my prospects or my players. You don't think he'll be in
the league ever again? I would tend to agree.
I think he will be. I don't think he should be.
Yeah, maybe.
Not until he. Steve Dangle says this too, but the receipts, or it might be Adam Wow, but they say it on the Steve Dangle podcast. Like, look, show me the receipts. Show me that you've done the time. Show me that you care. Show me that you're proving that you're trying to change your character, that what you did that one time is in the past and will not happen again. If you're not willing to show or work or get those receipts eventually, then I have no time giving you multiple millions of dollars to play hockey for me.
Yeah, I agree with that kind of sentiment. And I do agree that he probably will play. The only thing I think that's kind of helping him not play is the whole Evander Kane situation, because maybe all that going on is like people like, okay, we see because he had the same kind of issues way in the past, so maybe you kind of just pray that people finally wake up.
It's not really the same issues though, because
but
he has multiple issues also where he has picked on, harassed, abused, bullied, however you want to phrase it, athletes on his same team or in the same league, same country of origin and whatnot, because they're different colors, different races. And in a league in like the NHL, who is already behind and lacking in its diversity to begin with, the last thing it needs is somebody who has a track record of doing that and continues to do that, and they continue to put him on the airwaves and continue to pay him and continue to roster him, but then also try and support inclusivity and stuff like that. Like it's more damaging than anything. And I feel like the NHL may actually have to step in and say, like, until you go to like this program and that program and you complete these programs for us, I don't care if you sign with a team, you're not playing for them. Like you're making us look bad, and until you do this, we're not letting you play.
The only issue is like it's from a litigation standpoint, so he could
100%. PA would not be behind that. There would be issues. I agree all about that. So there's always that at play, but still, I think it's.
We'll see. It'll be the off season. Yeah. Let's not talk about him until then.
He doesn't even. We've already spent too much conversation on him, but at the same time, I just think it's silly that we continue to have these conversations that he was potentially traded, that they worked with another team to try and terminate his contract, to try and give him a soft landing and help him, and I think that's all silly when there's prospects and people who have dedicated their lives and can't get a sniff in the NHL that could probably play just almost as good as him. Like, I don't know. But what other defenseman that you saw traded, didn't see traded, did you want to bring up?
I think I only, on my list, I only had one being traded out of the list that we had, and he got traded. So
We got waived.
We got waived. Okay, sorry. Yeah, close enough.
I just, I know. I just had to be funny.
No, I don't.
Just had
I
to
don't know.
pick
I
on you.
think I talked about it last week. For the defenseman side of me, like there was nothing too big. It's all people to me adding depth, adding that sixth, seventh guy on their roster, and that seemed to me to be the big what basically happened. One, I guess I'll just touch. Jamie Benn did get traded, which I was a little bit surprised about.
Yeah,
they got
yeah,
like
me
a
too.
sixth rounder back, so whatever. But still, I was surprised that somebody wanted to add him.
I know I called that he was going to be traded, but then I know when we talked, you brought up the whole COVID thing, and then I was like, yeah, there's probably no way he's going to be traded because of that. Obviously, he's a playoff type guy, depth defenseman, but with the whole COVID thing, I'm kind of surprised anyone was willing to potentially take somebody on from a team that's experiencing COVID issues. But I guess if he does quarantine and all that stuff, then they're going to do their due diligence. But
Exactly, yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that's good for defensemen for me. What about you?
I mean, Savard was a big move. That was the big move off the top to Tampa. I thought he was going to Winnipeg or Boston, whoever paid more. And it may have just been Tampa who swooped in and stole that from that situation anyways.
Yeah.
But I also heard that Alexiak was close to being dealt to one of Edmonton or Toronto. And then they didn't really get the price they loved. And then they kind of won that one close game and they kind of want to keep him around. So they bailed on that. And then that's why Edmonton went to Kulikov and Toronto went to Hutton. So that was something that kind of happened last minute that I heard about. The other thing was Carolina. I heard Carolina was trying to move Hayden Fleury to Anaheim for Josh Manson. That's what I had heard. That was what they were trying to do. And then once the trade kind of fell apart, they went from Manson to Hakanpää. And then they settled on Hakanpää. But the fact that they moved Hayden Fleury for Hakanpää, I didn't think was a good move at all. But maybe there's like handshake type agreement that, in the off season, we're going to, finish this trade or like complete part 2 of the trade kind of thing.
That, from what I heard,
maybe we haven't
seen
seen the other
sour relationship from Carolina with Fleury. It was kind of, they were getting sour on him and it was just time to go their separate ways.
Yeah, he was an upcoming RFA, but like, I mean, that's the key thing of somebody holding on too long, right? Like if you aren't, we talked about the Leafs regenerating when they find somebody doing it right. You see sometimes players like this, teams hold on too long and they just don't get that right opportunity and then they just stale out. And then they just kind of, their value just bottoms out and they just kind of get moved on. Sometimes they never become anything, but then often those are the players that move on and then become, solid contributors to anything above that on their new team. So we'll see what happens there. But I thought that was one of the bad trades of the day. But yeah, I'm shocked Winnipeg didn't add a defenseman. I know I was on record on here saying in the past the Leafs weren't going to get out of the North, and I do want to talk about the Leafs, not this podcast, but in the next couple ones, maybe when we do our predictions for the standings. But I'm shocked. I'm so shocked that Winnipeg didn't make the move. I know they made their big move at the beginning of the year, but like they don't have their defense that they need in expansion. Not that they need, but like they're not worrying about who they're going to lose on defense and whatnot in expansion. So like they could have added defense. They had the assets to add that defense. Cheveldayoff for the most part kind of hoards assets just because a lot of people don't sign in Winnipeg. So he knows he's got to trade for them. I thought that this was the time, like it's Toronto or Winnipeg in the North. You got to think, right?
You would think,
probably.
Yeah,
so if they had added that defenseman, that would have probably put them and Toronto in that next tier above everybody. I think that they big swing and a miss. So the fact that they swung and miss, I now think that opens the door more for the Leafs. So I think there's more opportunity there. But yeah, I thought Winnipeg was a big loser on the day because we saw 5 or 6 defensemen moved, 6, 7 defensemen moved, any of which would have helped them. 2 of defensemen that got moved were former Winnipeg Jets themselves. Now, if you like them, that's one thing. But if you're familiar and you like them, then you should have gone out and got them, especially when they weren't expensive assets. So, yeah, I mean, on the defensive side, I thought Winnipeg, Boston, Toronto, I thought were the teams looking, and Winnipeg struck out. So I don't know what happened there, but that's what surprised me on D.
Maybe they just trust trust the process. They're gung ho. They're like, yeah, we're gonna wing it. We got this.
Yeah.
Confidence.
And who knows? They could still beat the Leafs, but we'll see. Let's move on to the centers, I guess.
Yeah. Centers, wingers, centers. You called it.
Yeah, I
right?
guess let's just wrap. What's that? The Foligno?
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt right. Who was the other team bidding over him? It was Minnesota. Minnesota was trying to bring him in to play with his brother. And the it was close, and basically they said, we want a first. Like, we're not going to move him. Whoever gives us the first gets the player. Yeah. So the Leafs said, fine, we'll do it. And they made the trade, and Minnesota didn't get him. Yeah, it basically was. And Toronto pulled it off. And I think he has the potential to be the most impactful person moved on the trade deadline day, maybe other than one of the defensemen.
Does he have to go into quarantine or anything coming into Toronto?
He does. Yeah, 10-day quarantine. He won't be ready until basically a week from now. He didn't get into Toronto until I think it was Wednesday morning, so yesterday morning. So then he has to do 10 days from yesterday morning, so it won't be until like next weekend now at this point. Or sorry, 7 days it is.
Yeah.
So it would be 7. So what, next Wednesday, which they don't play, I don't think, until next Friday.
And it makes sense that Minnesota didn't cough it up to me.
Yeah.
I don't think they got to be. I know that like they're a professional sports team and everything. They have ambition to beat, but they got to walk through very likely Vegas and Colorado at the same time to do it. Which one?
The only reason why I would have considered it if I was Minnesota, or why I would have been okay with it, I guess, is that Minnesota has a lot of good depth and prospects. They added, and they look good this year, and they would have potential to retain him.
Yeah,
I think that Minnesota would be a fair landing suitor for him to sign a 2 or 3 year extension. I don't think that's the case in Toronto. Maybe 1 year, but like I don't think so. But Minnie, if they paid a first this year and he's signed there for 3 years, they got him for 3.5 seasons. I think you could make a case for that, right?
Yeah. And the other one traded Travis Zajac we touched on last week because it was right before our episode. So far, he doesn't really have made too much of an impact on the Islanders. I think he's gotten 1 point so far.
Yeah. He's the third line center, though, no?
Yeah.
Which will be interesting because Islanders have Zajac as their third line center, and now Penguins have Jeff Carter as their third line center. So they're both going for flash of the past.
Yeah, seriously.
But in terms of the other forwards, the other wingers, I guess Taylor Hall might have been the biggest name moved on his way to Boston.
Biggest name, maybe. I think the best one was definitely Mantha, but
yes, yeah.
But yeah, Taylor.
And it's funny because I had him on the trade board here as well, eh?
Yeah, you did, and neither of us said he was going to be traded. I thought he was going to get held, and you thought off season he would get traded. So you at least were on the right track that he wasn't going to be.
I was smelling something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like, I don't know. He's such a good fit there, I think, in Washington. I think that might have been the best trade of the day. You said Foligno might have been.
I think that's probably one of the best places he could have gone. I think that's probably top 3, top 4 potential landing spots for him. And I think he's going to be a massive playoff producer. And I think Washington probably was one of the best teams in terms of what they did. Because people have to also remember, I know there's some talk with Panic about how he's a good fourth liner. He's really overpaid for a fourth liner. So like they paid to get Mantha, but they also paid Detroit to take Panic's contract off of their hand.
Yeah.
So it was a dump and a purchase in the same trade.
And they had to
that's why I think people have to be more fair.
And like they had to give up Verana, because at first I thought Mantha coming in, where's he going to fit? Verana's, but then I realized Verana went out. So it's really, he needed the spot for Mantha, and he's already produced since coming 2 points in his first game there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the guy's never had such good, talented teammates in his life. So I think the ceiling's so high right now for him.
Even on a second power play unit with a Kuznetsov and a whatever, right? Like that's still a pretty good thing. Or the net front presence with Ovi shooting the puck, like the tips, the screens that he's going to be able to provide. And the other thing as well is if you look at a lot of the bodies that Washington has collected and Washington has, A lot of their players, they can shoot, they can pass, they can punch you in the face, they can hit you, they can intimidate you, and he fits in that mold like of everyone else that they have, and he's such a Washington type player. I think he's gonna be huge for them. I think that he might be the most impactful trade on from the trade deadline.
Yeah, agreed. Sorry to cut you off about that Taylor Hall, but
oh no, that was a good call. But Taylor Hall, I mean, I have a sneaky suspicion he's going to go off just because it's Boston.
Yeah.
And just because of the whole storyline behind it. The one thing I saw that was funny was, isn't it funny how Boston got Tyler Seguin and turned him into nothing, but then got Taylor Hall for nothing?
Yeah, I saw that exact same thing. Maybe you shared it in the group. I can't remember.
It wasn't me, but somebody in our groups, shared it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Taylor Hall is going to do. He's definitely had unlucky shooting percentage this year so far, so maybe a little bit bounce back. He's going to finally have some teammates again because he's been working without Eichel and all that. Yeah, I don't know how they're going to deploy him, but now...
Sounds like second line with Krejci and somebody.
Okay.
Krejci and DeBrusk, maybe.
He's probably going to slot right into where Nick Ritchie had been playing for the most part.
And he's going to do well because he's going to be playing against other teams' second pair defensemen and second lines. Right now, he's not getting the toughest assignments that he was in Buffalo. So, I mean, even if he gets put on a top line or if they split up their big three and they put him with one of those guys or whatever, I think he has potential to go off here as well. And it's such a Boston type move to add a guy like that. And I think I even said it on a prior podcast that I can see him in Boston. I can see like the images in my head, pretending that I'm projecting through my forehead, a projector of like something I'm creating in my head. I can see him, flying down the wing and scoring such a Boston goal. And what's his name? Jack Edwards, the announcer, that goes crazy when they score. I can see him going crazy for Hall, and I can see him scoring an overtime goal, and like for that wins the series. Like I can just see it all now. So like I think it's going to work out for them. I think like what I mentioned with Foligno sticking around, I think they're going to retain Hall in Boston now. And I think it's going to turn out to be something that people in Boston's division wish didn't happen.
Yeah, agreed.
But it is what it is, and it's such a Boston thing to do. But another one that's a big pickup, I think, was Florida. Florida, I think, did really well. They got Gusev, Bennett. Unfortunately, they don't have Ekblad, but I thought they should have maybe grabbed another defenseman. But I thought they did okay in terms of that.
I gotta admit, this playoffs is shaping up to be a battle.
Yeah.
It's gonna be sweet.
I was looking at the our standings predictions that we'll get into in next show, I guess.
Next show, yeah.
I was gonna say show or two, but I guess next show. I enjoyed doing it a lot. Probably the most enjoyable time all year, looking at those divisions and looking at the potential playoff matchups.
Yeah,
I'm starting to get a little excited about that. I bet
you're missing because we used to do that almost every episode was just look at the standings.
Yeah.
So you're definitely probably missing that, but we'll probably have to do it from every episode till the playoffs now at this point with the playoff races.
Final chase.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We'll call
especially when there's a couple games with the COVID, multiple games. They'll be playing like 8 games in between our episodes, where other teams will be playing like 4. There'll be like
a new segment finally. We'll call it the Epic Chase or something.
Yeah, exactly. Who sucked? But yeah, another forward here is Alex Iafallo.
Yeah, I want to touch
Alex
on him.
Iafallo that I wanted to mention and just resigned. I think we both said that if he wasn't traded, it was probably because he was extended.
Yep.
I didn't think he typed resigned.
I typed resigned in there. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I honestly, when I wrote that though, thought it'd be in the off season.
Yeah.
It makes sense that they probably had a gun to his head. They're like, listen, sign now or you're gone. Or something.
Yeah, well, it also makes sense that they moved out Carter too, right? So they're probably like, hey, if you're gonna stick around for 4 years, then we can afford to let Carter move on to new pastures, and we'll commit to you then. And so it's win-win for them.
Good signing. They need it.
Yeah, I thought Kings were kind of quiet, but I think that they're gonna make noise in the summer. I think the Kings are gonna make 1, if not 2, blockbuster trades in the summer. I think I've been saying that all year. I feel like they're going to.
Yeah, it's not really their year to do much, I think.
No, not until the summer. Yeah.
It was last year was really they were doing a lot of selling.
Yeah.
I guess you want to touch on Marleau and Kane?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, well, I guess I mentioned the other one quickly too. Is Gusev was a buyout.
Yeah.
He got bought out by New Jersey and signed in Florida. I think he's going to be a nice fit there. In terms of Evander Kane, um, I guess it provides a little bit of clarity to us that it's not a definite
Yeah.
that he is going to be
Anywhere but San
terminated
Jose.
at the end of the
Yeah.
season. Yeah, exactly, and it's also not guaranteed that he is going to be sticking around. So it's just
more of a wait and
it's
see
clarity
approach at this
that
point.
there's no clarity. Exactly, there's clarity that there was no clarity at the deadline.
I like that.
So nobody picked him up. So, but the other guys that we spoke about a couple times was Marlowe, and I kind of am a little surprised he didn't get moved to somebody. Even if it was a Pittsburgh or Toronto. I mean, I guess Toronto moved Barabanov for Antti Suomela, who is a depth center. He's a creative, kind of shifty depth center.
Yeah.
So I guess that was their choice instead. But even like a Pittsburgh, like you add a Carter or whatever, like even if you add a Marlowe and put him on waivers for the taxi squad, like I don't know, I felt like somebody could have.
Yeah, we talked about it pretty in depth. Like he's
him.
you're basically paying him like how you pay those public speakers to come in and pump up your corporation. Paying them $900,000 for that. Guess they didn't want to do it, but
team mascot kind of without being the team mascot.
The team dad, isn't that how it worked in Toronto?
Basically, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of wraps up the trade deadline, but that there's some interesting moves and interesting non-moves.
So who would you say the biggest winner and the losers of the trade deadline? I know you kind of touched on them already.
I should have looked in more depth in terms of the, like true winners a little bit, but
you already said
I think Toronto did really well. Yeah, I think Toronto did well. Without taking a cop out, I think a lot of the elite teams that we expected to make the moves made the right moves. I think Boston got better. I think Toronto got better. I think Tampa got better. I think Carolina will get better when they get healthy. Colorado got deeper, maybe not better, but deeper. Vegas is who Vegas is. The Islanders got better after they got hurt. Washington got better. So like all the top teams got better. So I think it's going to make playoffs more fun. Just because the better teams got better and they're even better than they were.
And a couple of those star players that were on teams that not making the playoffs, now we get to see them in the playoffs, like Hall and Mantha and things like that. It's always good to see the better players in there, right?
I've been debating making this call today or not, but I'm going to make some crazy call that the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to get kicked out in the first round.
I don't think that's as crazy as you're letting it on to be.
Yeah, and the reason there's an asterisk beside that, and the reason I say there's an asterisk beside that is that I don't think they win the division.
Yeah, that's.
I know it. I know in my standings prediction, I'm going to keep them in the top just because I've had them there all year. Bet. I kind of. It's more because I have the. I don't know if I want to call it OCD, but like I don't want to see like Tampa. So like just for consistency, I'll keep it Tampa. But I do think they're gonna get the second seed or third seed.
I have to go back and see who we predicted in the Cup final. I can't remember who I had. I think I had Tampa in there in the Cup final.
I think I had I think we did our Final Four, didn't we?
No. Yeah, maybe Final Four.
I think we only did Final.
I was a grease ball and said Nashville, which I think is still possible.
Possible. I know I picked Washington. I know I was heavy on Washington to start, and they just
I wasn't, and then you've just when we were doing the preview videos, you convinced me to stop sleeping on Washington, and I'm glad
a lot of people were sleeping on Washington. There was a lot of people who had them out of the playoffs to start, and I was like, no. I didn't think they'd be this strong, especially in their division, because they are more meant for the playoffs. Like they're a playoff built team, but they're also built to succeed in the regular season because they kill people on the power play and stuff like that. Like, they're not missing anything. They have all the elements, and they're one of my favorites for the Cup.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's do 3 stars.
Let's do it.
And I'm gonna kick things off this week with my 3 stars of the week. I think I didn't when I was filling in mine, I didn't see yours, so we did have a repeat, but we fixed that. But I'll kick things off. My 3rd star of the week is Mr. Zach Hyman from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's got a 6-game point streak. I know when mostly think of the Toronto Maple Leafs, you think of a lot of other players before this guy, so I wanted to give him some props because he's been playing pretty great. for them. Six game point streak, 7 points in the last 4 games. So just been a very good player for them all around. It's been all season. He's been pretty solid for them, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been talk in the radio around here about what are the percent chances that Zach Hyman makes the Canadian team if Canada has a team in, what is it, Tokyo in 2020, whatever it is. Yeah. And like, I think it was Darren Dreger had it like 30%. Dave Poulin, I think, had 60%. Jeff O'Neill said 100%.
Wasn't there a time when Crosby made 2010 maybe, they basically sent his winger with him to
yeah.
So it's possible. Well, I say
Pascal
that.
Dupuis.
Yeah, something like that. I think that.
Yeah.
I say that, but then Matthews is American, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well.
But yeah, no, that'd be an interesting thing. We might have to do a video do a Team America versus Team Canada breakdown. That could be fun.
I think we will. Even if it doesn't happen, we'll have to do our mock-up teams that we would have sent if it's there. But I think people have to just chill just with Hyman's extension. There's also a lot of talk about how he's pricing himself out of Toronto already and stuff like that. Everybody in Toronto just needs to chill out.
Toronto loves to get up in these contract craziness.
Right? Forget that we're in this season. Forget it's not done yet. Forget we're a favorite to go far. Let's talk about how Hyman's going to leave us because he's worth too much now. It's so Toronto. Yeah. But he wants to be here. He's spent his whole career working on becoming a Toronto Maple Leaf. Unless the Leafs say, no, we're not offering you anything, or we're offering you like $2 million.
Like an insult.
He's going to be back. Yeah, he's going to be back. They'll find a way to make it work. But yeah.
All right, moving along. My second star of the week goes to Mr. Nathan McKinnon. Colorado's just been on a tear. Won 9 of their last 10. And even before that, I'm pretty sure they've won like 13 of the last 15. I'm just making numbers up. But he's got 6 points in the last 4 games. 4 of them are goals. And he's on an 11-game point streak, of which more than half of those games are multi-point games. So just all around killing it. Honestly, the top trio of Colorado plus Makar are all just been monster for them. Really putting up the points. They're gonna be. If they didn't have to face Vegas, I would really be rooting for them. But otherwise, Yeah. And so that brings me on to my first star of the week. I love this man. I called him out at the beginning of the season as being a potential goalie and part of the reason why I picked Nashville to go to the Final Four. Mr. Juuse Saros, 4 straight wins in nets for the Nashville Predators, really bringing them into that 4th spot in that division, which that division is going to be a crazy playoff, I must say. Who knows how that one's going to go. And if they get in that 4th spot, I think they very well could upset. They need forwards back and stuff like that, but they got potential. Yeah. But anyway, 4 straight wins for this guy, and in those 4 games, 1.75 goals against and above 0.92 saves, so just all around solid for them. And my ridiculous first numbers. Yeah,
he's been their MVP for sure. He has been their Phoenix.
Yep.
He has brought them back from the ashes for sure.
Yep,
that's 100%. So yeah, I guess I'll go to my 3rd star. My 3 stars are kind of a little bit unique, I'll say. I kind of picked guys that were not your obvious picks, but they had reasons.
I almost picked the one guy you got, but I'll let you get after it.
Okay, so maybe 3rd star is Bradykachuk. I picked him not because he's necessarily producing a lot, but he is the engine of the Senators. He is already becoming their leader. He has 20. What was it? I didn't write the actual numbers down here. I think it was either 22 shots on goal and 20 hits, or vice versa, which would put him top 3 in both categories over the last week. So for a guy like that who can also score, he plays hard, he finishes goals, he goes to the net. He's also leading in other ways, and I think he's just going to become a beast in this league. And I think he's starting to show his true kind of power down the stretch. And I think he's going to run amok a little bit here against some of the teams down the stretch, kind of just showing them what they need to prepare for moving forward.
Yep, I love it. I almost picked him. I consider him for sure as well.
2nd star I was Juuse Saros before we realized we had the same one. So I actually swapped that over to Vasilevsky. The reason why I had swapped is just because Saros had played a couple more games. But in the games that Vasilevsky played, which was only 2, he went 2-0 with 1 shutout. The reason also why I picked him up is that Tampa Bay's suffering some injuries and stuff right now. They've been resting Vasilevsky to get him healthy down the stretch and ready to go for the last few games. And in doing so, they've been putting McKinnon in every couple games. He's been getting lit up every time he goes in. So I think it just shows his value that without their pure stars up front, it's not just a name back there. He's legit. He still should be in the conversation for the Vezina.
Definitely.
And then the first star is my boy Ovi. He's starting to finally not heat up, but finally just put those elite numbers up on a game-to-game basis that I was expecting for my fantasy output on my other team. He has 5 points in the last 4 games with 22 shots on goal. So he's up there with Tkachuk as well. He doesn't have any game winners, but I think he has 4 or 5 power play points in his last 7 games, 6 games, 7 games. So a little bit more than a week. But still, he's really kind of, I think last time I checked, he was ranked 10th or 12th in our fantasy league. Well, not ours, but my other one. So
for the past
he was
7
ranked
days,
in the 50th.
or overall.
Yeah. Over the last 14 or 30 days, not 7, but wasn't the season, but it maybe 30 days. But he was like 50, 60-ish for a while there. So he's finally kind of going at the right time, and I think that
it's those old man bones. They take a little while to get going.
Right, he needed the grease and everything just to get into his full Ovi mode. And now you add Mantha, you add all these guys. They've got Chara already. I'm a tad worried about their goaltending. I'm a little surprised Washington didn't pick up Bernier for cheap. That's towards the last minutes of the day after seeing what Washington else, like the other pieces they added. I was kind of a little shocked they didn't just grab Bernier or at least another goalie for some depth. That might come back to bite them, but let's see. Ovi's leading them. They're playing like an Ovi team, and I'm scared of them. But picked Ovi for my first star.
Yeah, agreed with that. I almost had him in my stars as well, so couldn't agree more. And really the best player on potentially the best team right now, so gotta love it. Loving it. All right, and that concludes the 3 stars.
3 stars.
All right, so let's get to
trivia time.
Yeah. All right, so
you didn't look up the answer?
I did not. I have a feeling that who it was, but I also think that might be a trap. So I don't know. So what's the question that you laid to me today?
The question is, there is one team in the NHL who has not been shut out at least one time on the season. Which NHL team is that?
All right, so a couple teams come to mind, but I know I can eliminate Vegas because I remember them being shut out. Right?
Yeah. It's not Vegas,
and then I can remember the Avalanche being shut out. So then I'm going through. I'm trying to go through. I'm like, this guy's a Toronto fan. He's gonna find some weird Toronto stats, and I can't remember them being shut out. So I'm getting concerned. And then that's my guess. It's Toronto. It's lame, and it's not. Oh, okay. Damn.
They've been shut out, I think, twice actually.
Okay. Then my next guess after that was Florida. So now I'm out. I'm out of guesses.
Let's just keep going. I want to see how long it takes you to get the right team.
Okay. This is.
You can narrow it down if you want to ask the division.
Okay. Yeah. Like, what are they? East or Western Conference? Like in the regular.
In the regular breakdown, East. In the non-regular breakdown, East.
In the non-regular breakdown, East. Okay. So Tampa has been shut out. I'm gonna go. Is it Pittsburgh? Not the The Islanders?
Let me just give you a hint. It's probably the last team or one of the last teams you would guess. So maybe flip and go to the bottom of the end.
Well, it's not Buffalo. Now. We know they got shut out a bunch.
Yeah.
The Devils?
Oh.
Damn. The Flyers?
Oh.
No, I know they got shut out for sure by the Rangers at least once. What the hell? This is taking it's Carolina. They've been it.
It's going to blow your mind.
I'm trying to even think who's even over there anymore.
We've talked about them in the last 5 minutes.
Not Nashville. They're not in the East. The Senators.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yes.
ding. Ottawa
Wow.
Senators are the only team in the NHL not to be shut out this year.
No way.
How crazy is that?
That's nuts.
I heard that stat and I was like, I don't believe it. I actually looked the last three calendar months and they didn't have any. I didn't go all the way back to the start of the season, but I trusted what they said. I heard it on the radio 4 to 5 days ago. So I wasn't sure the last 2 or 3 games if they got shut out. So that's why I went to validate that. But yeah, that's what they had said, is that they were the only team that has yet to be shut out on the season.
That blows my mind.
Every other team has won.
Blows my mind.
It's incredible.
Yeah, they still. Well, at least they know their scoring is going to be all right going forward. But
I do remember the one game Leafs beat them. I don't remember if it was 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, something one. And the Senators scored with like 7 seconds left or something. That game was the closest.
Well, there was something very similar when they were playing the Habs, because I remember having Jake Allen as my goalie, and they scored with like almost no time left.
Yeah, I think there was like 13 seconds left or something like that on that one as well.
So all the people out there targeting the Senators with goalies in fantasy hockey are getting owned and haven't got a shutout all season.
Well, they're kicking the shutout to the door, right?
Yeah.
They're not even trying for that. The other stats should be good.
Yeah, the wins, yeah.
But you're aborting on shutouts based on that statistic. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Thought that was an interesting one. But yeah, in terms of the standings breakdown, I know we mentioned we're going to get that next week, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. That's going to be a good conversation. Yeah, I know I've been back and forth and looking at yours, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one for sure. I'm getting close to putting something crazy in there for next week.
Yeah, I'm on the border of making some serious changes, just so that we can have a good conversation about like potential upsets and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's some of the battles, for example, the Florida, Tampa, Carolina.
Yeah,
I think they're within 2 points or something like that. That race is going to be fun, and that debate will be fun to have. But yeah, even some of the other teams that are chasing the final spots, even in the North, like Calgary and Montreal, those conversations will be fun. So
yeah, there's a couple spots.
By then, we'll have a little bit more games.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll have more games played too, right? So we'll have a bit better idea. And I know I mentioned I kind of wanted to do a thing on Leafs, but I don't really want to do that tonight, just because I want to see kind of what the way they look once Nylander gets off COVID, once Foligno gets through COVID, once they get some practices with their new bodies. I just want to kind of put my take down on pre-playoffs, what I think what I think as a Leaf fan that we expect, what we might see, and kind of what I see happening. So
the Leafs fan corner that as well. A new segment coming to a Coast to Coast podcast.
Just for the one thing.
All right, dude. I think that basically wraps up today then, right?
I think we're good.
All right, awesome. Until next time, I'm Alex. He's Tori.
We think.
We'll see you in the next video, boys and girl.
All right. Cheers.
Later, dude.